Hello, sports fans. Welcome to the Inner Sanctums Supercoach Podcast. Looking back at round one and into round two, thanks to the 130 people who had a look last week, or maybe my mum watched 130 times. I'm not sure, but we seem to have grown in people who are actually going to be joining us this week, which is great. I've got Mike returning from next week. How you doing, Mike?
Going well, thanks, Scott.
That's good. How'd your Supercoach side go last week, Mike?
Had its ups and downs. Top 13%, 2028. I wasn't too displeased, but there's definite room for improvement.
Nice one. And joining us for the first time is diehard Bombers supporter, I reckon. Mick, how you doing?
I'm well, Scott. How are you, mate?
All good. Thanks for joining us. How'd your side go last week?
Thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, about the same as Mike's, bit up and down. 1997. So definitely room for improvement. Had some what I think was some really decent selections, but also some very poor ones. So there's a few rage trades going on tonight, I'd say, but we'll see how we go.
Nice one. And also joining us is Supercoach enthusiast Dan. How you doing, Dan?
Yeah, not too bad. Didn't do too well this week, but
how'd you go?
Early goings. 1952, which is my lowest start to a season, I reckon, in about 6 or 7 years or something. So room to improve.
Don't let Dan's background fool you. He's a diehard Carlton man. What's with the Ben Cunnington background?
I just thought he needed some support. He's come back after a long absence. He's probably not put in. You know what I think it is? He's used to carrying a team over the line, and they were actually good. And he wasn't needed, so he put the cue in the rack, and he'll be out next week. That's what I'm hoping.
Nice one. Well, I scored a whopping 1800 and something, 1810. I didn't want to look, but I had a couple of the injury ones, which we'll get to. So, well and truly not the best start, but doesn't really count at this point. So we'll move on. We'll just quickly have a bit of a recap of round one. Maybe if we just want to talk about a couple of our players in our side that we thought were the sort of, we've gone here with the Garys and Nathans rather than the studs and duds. So the Gary Ablets, the guns we've had this week. The competition's highest scorers were all blokes pretty much mid-price. Luke Ryan, 171. Do any of you have him?
Not this year. Did have him last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So the top five scores, Luke Ryan, none of us would have. Brendan Cox, none. Dane Rampy, none of us. Keziah Pickett and Steve Caniglio was the fifth highest score. Any of us have Cogs?
Had Cogs up until about 10 minutes before the first bounce, I'd say, and then got rid of him. Another genius move.
Had a few of those.
Likely story. And if anyone has the time, go and have a look at the bloke who won round one. His midfield was an absolute mess, but he just happened to pick the right random ones in the forwards and backs, and so he managed to win. So no dramas if you didn't have those top five. Let's talk about the ones that really dominated that a lot of people had. I'll start with none of us had Cogs, but what about Maxi Gawn, 140 in the ruck? How many of us decided to go with Maxi Gawn?
Yeah, I did. If our viewers of a whopping 130 listened in last week, we had a long discussion about who would go for the ruckman. I wanted English, you wanted Gawn. I think we ended up flipping come the first bounce, and I actually put my C on Gawny, and he dominated. So it's probably one of the reasons I got over into the 2000s in round one, which was good. Marshall, unfortunately, I think he had a bit of a shoulder niggle in the second half, didn't he? So only scored 80, but very pleased having Maxi in the side. I think he's a lock.
What about you, Dan? Which ruckman did you end up rolling with if you didn't have Maxi Gawn?
I went with Wits, and he scored 140 also, I think.
Yep.
So, but no, I was tossing it up because I had English and Marshall, English and Wits, and I ended up going Wits and Marshall in the end. But yeah, so it'd be interesting to see what Marshall can pull out this week.
Yeah. What about you, Mick? Which two ruckman did you roll with?
End up with English and Marshall. I've had Maxi in my team for the last 5 years, I'd say, and I was going to pick him again, but then with Grundy coming into the team and spending less time in the middle, a bit more time up forward, didn't think his scoring would be out there, and I've obviously been proven wrong by that. But English, a really impressive score again, 134, and I think he was on about 90 at half time, so he actually fell away in the second half. Marshall, like Dan said, had a bit of a niggle. So 80, I'll stick with him. His pre-season form has been really good. So yeah, I won't be making any trades in that department.
Look, if you look at the Max Gawn 140, Jared Witt's 140, Tim English 134. So I had Tim English as well in the end. So we've all gone Marshall, which nearly everybody has. And then between the other three, they've all got pretty much the same score. So I think most people are going to be pretty happy with their ruck combo no matter what. A couple of the other Garys, the ones that dominated a lot of people have. Tom Green, 35% ownership and 134. Who had Tommy Green? That's it.
I did up until about a week before. Yes, one of those ones that I traded out and wished I hadn't. But you can only fit so many in.
Trade him out for Josh Kelly at the last minute, and which cost me an extra 50k, and then also cost me about 60 points. So, and then Kelly actually got injured. I think it was late in the third quarter, possibly. Still got 80, so he probably would have made his ton if he'd stayed on the ground. But still, yeah, a bit disappointing.
And the other one of the who's got 33% ownership with the 129 is Nick Dacos. So, do any of us have Dakes?
I guess the last minute.
There we go. This is what we should call this episode. Up until the last minute. The question then, I guess, for our Supercoach watchers is how many of us are thinking we got to get Green and Dacos in, and at what point? Mike, what do you reckon?
I'm going to look more heavily at Green than I am at Dacos. I think they're around the same price, but Green is an in and under. He's a bull. He gets clearances and he tackles. So a lot of contested possessions where I'm expecting some tags for Dacos throughout the year, which will most of his scores based on possession. He doesn't get a lot of contested footy. He gets a lot out the back. So I'll definitely Green, not so much Dacos.
What about you, Mick? Green or Dacos? Particularly fancy?
Yeah. Mike makes a good point about Dacos copping tags, which he did in the pre-season, which he didn't. He still handled it fairly well. Green, but he is as a defender who can score. 120, 130. It's a big ceiling for a defender as opposed to a midfielder. But Green, does get 15 contested possessions on the weekend. So like Mike said, he is a ball in in and under type player. I'm tossing up probably leaning towards Dacos at this stage, bringing him in instead of Green if I have to choose between the two.
Nice. What about you, Dan?
Tossing up the two, because really you look at it and you go, someone's got to put time into Nick Dacos at some stage, surely. Like it's just death by 1,000 cuts if you let him dispose of the ball. So, and then Tom Green started off like a house on fire last year. So I think if you look at his first 3-4 rounds, he was scoring the hundreds, and then he fell in a hole. So I don't know. I wouldn't be swayed too much too early to pull the trigger on getting them in, unless you had someone that you were really thinking about getting rid of. But maybe in a couple of weeks.
Good segue.
Plenty other defenders that are still scoring pretty well as well. So if you're going to put them in, you got to put someone out.
But there is one defender which we might as well talk about now, and he's on the first on my list of Nathan's, the ones that struggled. That's Tom Stewart. Through no fault of his own, really. We could blame the MCG service or not, but just 18 points, looking like at this stage should be out for 3-4 weeks, maybe even a couple more. A third of the people own him. Maybe he's straight to Dacos. How many of us had Tommy Stewart? I know I did, and that's why my score's so low. Anyone else have Tommy Stewart?
Yeah, I also had him, only because he served me so well last year. That he constantly gets 130 plus. He takes your kick-ins, and he started off. I mean, he was 18 points, but he was down in halfway through the first quarter. So look, last year after his incident, he was out for 4 weeks. I kept him on the bench, so I'll contemplate doing that again. But especially even with 36 trades, you don't want to use them up very
Well,
quickly.
that's what I was going to ask, Dan. If you had Tom Stewart, 600,000 at the moment, his price is probably, even if he's out for 3 weeks, you're probably looking at his price dropping 80 grand. Would you be one of those people who would suggest trade, and then if you want him back, get him 80 grand cheaper, or hold on to him?
It's one of those ones that if you don't have him, he's an awesome target in 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks even. But if you look at it last year, he had that game where he got concussed, came back and scored 174 and 180, and he didn't drop in price at all. So I don't know. I think it's worthwhile thinking about. It's just that thing of trades. And if you reckon this year, I mean, I suppose we got the 36 last year with COVID interruptions. How many COVID interruptions do you think you'll have this year with players in the last moment going down? So
No.
I don't think it'll be as many.
No.
So I think 36 trades is a lot of trades.
Yeah, well, that's my decision this week, whether I decide to hold or not. It's going to be a tough one. What about the one? So the worst score for hype of the round, no doubt, is Nat 5's 26. Nearly in half the sides, everyone's forward. There's one that we can make some money on. He'll dominate. And if you'd watched last week, we both said no, it's steer clear. And the 26. Mick, what would your advice be to Fife owners out there, assuming you haven't got him with your score?
I actually am a Fife owner.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so yeah, I jumped on board.
What are you going to do then?
2 years ago, he was a Brownlow medalist. I mean, he had to come good. I didn't actually see much of the Freo game, but I heard from what I've read, he was just very poor. Just couldn't get into the game at all. I think I'll keep him for another week. I think I've got other trade targets this week that I need to sort out. I think I'll stick with him. I think the cream always rises to the top, in my opinion. And if he's underdone, then that's one thing. But I think he's had a good preseason from what I've read. So I'll be hanging on to this stage.
Mike or Dan, you got Fifey at all?
Yeah, I do too. Let's not get carried away with round one.
We said last week,
Supercoach. Look at these Essendon supporters. They're on top of the ladder. Only one side since 2007 has made the final since they're on top of the ladder after a round. Let's just calm down. All right, Fife, he's a gun, and he'll come back. Expect a bigger score this round, especially playing at home. I reckon we'll be right.
Yeah,
that's a rage. That's a rage trade if you're dropping him now at
They got North.
30,000.
Yeah, they got North in Perth.
That's a win.
And the other one, the other one is who he's only in about 28% of sides, but he's the highest priced person in Supercoach, and Rory Laird, who managed to rack up a 50 only. Any of the four of us got Rory Laird? I steer clear of anyone over 650. Dan, tell us what you're thinking about Rory Laird then.
Again, it goes back to those trades, doesn't it? Like, if you think he's going to be in the top 8 midfielders by the end of the year,
which we all
got
do,
the potential to save yourself a trade. Yeah, but if I don't know, you could also make a lot of money on downgrading to someone that's like Tom Green, that's performing really well. But do you burn a trade to then bring him back in? Is it worth that 150, 200,000? It probably is. It probably is.
Yeah. Look, from my quality mathematics background, I reckon his price is you're probably going to get him, if he has another sub 100, you're looking at 600,000 in 3 or 4 weeks, which I think he would snap up. I guess it also depends how his scores go for the next few weeks. You're right about the burning a trade, but if you think he's a top 8 midfielder, you probably, he's the one that a lot of people would have picked to be like, hey, that's going to be my captaincy lock that I'm going to go with each week. So if you get rid of him, then you have to sort of think, who am I going to pick? Yeah.
Just surely give him 1 more week. I'm going to give him 1 more week. I'll wear the bad score if it's a bad score, but if he turns out and scores 140, I'll just keep along. It's just I'll give him 1 more week. I'm not going to rage trade just yet.
Put the C elsewhere, Dan.
Yeah.
So the other Nathans, the ones that a lot of people owned and struggled, was the 44% of teams, Liam Jones and just the 5. But it's looking like he's probably going to be a short-term injury only when they thought it was going to be longer. So perhaps you hold him. He's only 228,000, so there's not too much point in getting rid of him. And then we get into the rookies like Fergus Green, got 33 only. He's only in 55%. He's in 55% of teams. Sorry, Campbell Chesser 20 only. What are your thoughts on the rookie situation, Mick? What do you do with these rookies who didn't perform well?
Yeah, it's interesting. Chesser, 20. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people pick these guys, because they were quite highly rated in their preseason performances. And Chesser in particular was, I think he was predicted to at least sort of go 60, 70 a week. Fergus Green, I was at the Essendon Hawthorn game. He looked quite good that first quarter. I think he actually scored. He might have been on 30 odd at about halfway through the second quarter, and then he really just went to sleep for the rest of the game. So I think that scoring potential is there with him. I'll be sticking with him for sure. Chesser, I think, the rookies, you got to give them more than 1 week. You don't know what these guys are capable of at the first game of AFL footy. So some of these low scoring ones, I've got him. I've got Lockie Cowan, who was injured as well. Didn't score overly well. Oscar Baker's another one. He scored 43. So I won't be getting rid of any rookies at this stage.
Dan, what were your thoughts on you want to speak about Fergus Green?
Just going to say his game mirrored Hawthorn's, really. Like, he's a forward, and they played about 1.5 quarters of the game, and then they got absolutely trounced. So he's not going to get I don't know, he's not going to get that much service. So it is the question of, forwards in lower ranked teams, are they going to get the ball enough versus the defenders in the lower ranked teams who are going to get a lot of the ball. So yeah, I don't know, just worth thinking about.
And then one rookie, however, that certainly Mike seems to be all on board, assuming that's his picture. I don't even know what Harry Sheasel looks like. Is that his name? I don't even know. Mike, you can talk about him since you were there.
I was at the game, and even as a West Coast supporter, it's hard not to see him. He popped up everywhere. Him and Davies Uniacke, they were both absolutely outstanding, especially in that second quarter. Geez, they tore West Coast to shreds in and around the ball, and I think shares a lot of the time. He was a forward as a junior, wasn't he? He's coming off half back and picking up 30 plus disposals. He was very good. Like, I'm in mixed court. I've got 7 rookies on the bench, 6 on the field. I'll be holding on to all of them if they're going to continue to get picked. A couple are really, really impressive. Mackenzie from the Hawks, 93. I actually had him on the bench. Philippou, I think he performed strongly, as well as the Sheasel as well. So I think if they're going to continue to get games, definitely not going to get rid of any rookies after round 1.
Yeah, I don't have. Sorry, Mick, here you go.
Sorry, Scott. Yeah, and Gimby also scored really well with 85. And the other one was actually one I was just going to bring up with you guys is Ashcroft. I think only 55 for his first game, and this kid was talked up to be the best thing since Sam Walsh in terms of first year Supercoach players. But like Mike said, it's too early to tell with players with some of these guys. But 55's it's not alarming, but you kind of were hoping more in the realms of sort of 80 to 90 in his first game. But yeah, it's nothing to be alarmed at just yet.
Yeah, well, I don't have Harry Sheasel, but last year Josh Rochelle was the actual highest scoring rookie in round 1 with about 118. Everyone goes, let's jump on, and he did nothing from that moment onward and only made about $80,000. So yes, Sheasel's had a great game first up, but he could do his knee in round 2. Hoping not, but he could do his knee, and then you've wasted a trade. So let's talk about what we're looking at doing heading into week 2. It's always a bit of a strange one when there's no price changes happening. But let's start with you, Dan. What are your thoughts on any trades you're looking to make? Any suggestions? Any advice for our huge numbers of fans out there watching?
I made one of those preseason faux pas of looking at something that happened in a game plan from Adam Kingsley, where he puts Lockie Ash in something like 16 of the centre bounce attendances or something in one game in the preseason. And they're crying out for someone that can actually use the ball in midfield in the first half of the Adelaide game, and he's still stuck across halfback, scoring a measly 67 points or something. So he's my first one that's I'm going to raise trade, because if he's not
That's
playing
the way.
midfield, he doesn't score points, so he's out. But
That's
there's
what we like
plenty
to see.
of them out there, so
Yeah.
I'm definitely cutting him. But I think looking at it, like going back to Ashcroft, Brisbane were soundly beaten in the midfield, and obviously across the entire ground. But I think that Horn Francis, I don't have him, and I just think it just shows that when you're playing for a team that you want to play for, what you can do. So I'm thinking I'm gonna jump on the Hornet. I think that's my go.
So Ash to Hornet, and Horn Francis got 136 last week. So I'm liking that we're going to have rage trades each week. I think if you just conservative, there's no point having a go. What about you, Mick? What you got any thoughts for your team this week?
I think I did start with Hopper, Jacob Hopper, who started moved over to Richmond this year, and he only scored 67 on the weekend, which for another mid-pricer, 330k, it's a touch and go whether I keep him. But Horn Francis, like Dan, I didn't start with him. I need to find a way to get him into the team, because one of the kids got a lot of talent, and like you said, he didn't bring it at North because he didn't want to be there. But now he seems to be relishing his new role at Port. So I'll find a way to bring him in. And then after that, I'd say the only other trade I'll probably target is possibly Nick Dacos, but then it means I'm going to have to get rid of some of the likes of Chesser or Cowan. So got a bit of thinking to do. I'm not really quite sure. And then in terms of captain strategy this week, I had Petrarca as my captain this weekend. He only got 97. So I haven't seen. So who's the early game this week?
Geelong Carlton is the first one.
Yeah, so I had Doherty's Maguire last weekend. He scored 108, which I didn't go with. So I thought Petrarca would outdo that, and ended up falling about 10 short. So it didn't cost me massively, but I'll probably go with Doherty again, I'd say, as vice, and then look to put the captain on for the likes of maybe Tim English, I'd say.
Yeah, Mike, what about you? What are you thinking for the fans out there this week? What are your suggestions?
Well, I think I'm going to be the boring one of this tribe, guys. I learned my lesson last year. I think for those who listened in last year, it got to the grand final, and last season, last season it got to the grand final, and I was out of trades, and I got burnt by my opponent who did have trades. So I'm not in a rush to use mine. I always blow them every year, and I reckon the only trades I'm going to do are potentially Tom Stewart if it is looking like more 4 to 6 weeks. I can make 100 plus going to Dacos. I can make 100 plus. I've already got 200k in the bank, so I might make it 300 and score some points. So I'm holding.
Yeah, look, I think that's the advice that we would give most people out there, unless you're really one of those ones that likes to trade and chase points from the start. I think I've got. Oh yeah, it's it. Just chop. That's it. I've got Hopper as well, and if he scores mid 60s again, and Horn Francis does another blinder, then it's a no-brainer. It's similar price to switch on over, even for just the money. Tom Stewart, I'll have to think about. If I wasn't a Geelong supporter, he'd be gone. But I'll see what the prognosis is as we get closer to the weekend, whether it's only going to be a couple. I think the captain's advice out there, based on last week, is just ruckman. I think that when you go Gawn or Wits or English, or even have a crack with Marshall, I think that's probably your safer bet. But who knows? That's the part of the fun. So
I think we have to bring up last week's discussion, Scott. Our points of difference. Mine didn't even make it on the field. Mine didn't make it on the field, and I got sucked in by the hype around Maxi Holmes, which he was on 45 points halfway through the second. I'm thinking you're a genius. and he's only he's finished on 76. So I tell you, don't look at Hopper to Horn Francis. Look at Holmes. He needs to lift.
Don't worry.
Look at my man Jai Cully, who might be back into the side this week, and also by point of difference in last week, Elliot Yeo will be named this week as well. So maybe it's Tom Stewart to Elliot Yeo, making himself 300,000.
I'm sticking with my man Max, mainly because my Supercoach side is named after him, and he nearly ran me over at the G on Friday night on the way to the ground. So that was probably a bad luck charm, but I'll give him one more week. He did look great for the first quarter and a half, but yeah, he done his job for a couple of weeks, and then he might be the one to go. Any last comments, Dan, for the people out there for coming up this week?
Yeah. Just one. If you look at like the top 10 or 11 players scoring, 3 of them were Dockers defenders. That's got to be a game plan thing, doesn't it? Like that ball use across the halfback line. That was ridiculous that Luke Ryan, 170 odd, Brennan Cox, 150 odd, and I think the other one was Hayden Young at 140. I'll watch that. I'm not gonna get any of them just yet, but if that's a Fremantle game plan of trying to dish the ball around with those 3 players, at least one of them will need to be picked up, I reckon.
Well, who's taking the kick-ins?
They all are.
Luke Ryan, I think. But they probably do share it a bit. But there was only 10 behinds from St Kilda, so that wasn't the reason.
There's only 150 points in the game, so there was a lot of just kicking it around and uncontested marks.
We will add to the agenda for next week's show to Freo Backman watch, and you can fill us in. Mick, any last minute thoughts on round 2?
It'd be interesting to see if McLean actually gets picked this weekend. I had him right up until the last minute, and it was a big surprise that he wasn't picked in the starting 22. But then he was given the green vest. So then when he did come on, he came on fairly late in the game. I've got it here. He subbed in. He played 38 minutes and only scored 21 points. So didn't have a huge impact after he came on the field. But if he is picked again, talking about a guy that used to score, regularly score hundreds in the Doggies forward line, and he's still priced at about, I think it's 170K from memory. So if he can start getting some regular field time and actually starting in the starting 22, I think he could be a pretty worthy investment. So definitely one to keep an eye on Thursday night selections.
Nice one, Mike. Any last words?
Not a lot from me. I'll be interested to see the response from Brisbane. Dan touched on the midfield; they're absolutely smashed, which is probably happened a handful of times in the last 2 or 3 seasons. You bring in Dunkley and this wonder kid in Ashcroft, and to get destroyed like that. So I think they got Melbourne at home this week, haven't they? So I'll be interested to see how they perform. I actually went with probably too many Brisbane players. I got Ashcroft, went with Neil, who was probably below par, and McKenna in the back line, your old ex-Bomber, who I think performed really, really well off half-back. So interested to see how the Brisbane boys go in round 2.
That's it. Yeah, I agree. So I think the advice is, unless you want to do a real rage trade when you didn't one that you really didn't like this week, is to just keep an eye on those rookies that are playing. Hopefully all your rookies are playing, and if not, whether you ditch one or whether you just hold firm, keep those trades. And then next week is when the real discussion begins, once we look at price drops and whatever else. But for this week, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Mick. Thanks, Mike, for joining us. Thanks to everyone out there for joining us on the Supercoach podcast this week. Make sure you subscribe to the Inner Sanctums YouTube channel and jump on their website and check out all the great stuff that they've got going on. Thanks, guys. We'll talk next week.